Think your smartphone makes you technologically advanced? Vikings were conquering the harshest environments on Earth over 1,000 years ago without a single piece of modern equipment. While we're busy stockpiling freeze-dried meals and high-tech gadgets, we've completely overlooked the ingenious survival systems that kept Norse explorers alive during months-long ocean voyages and brutal Scandinavian winters. Today, you're going to discover 10 abandoned Viking technologies that have been lost to time. Techniques so effective that they could revolutionize how modern preppers think about self-sufficiency, from creating fire that never dies to building living fortifications that grow stronger every year. These Norse innovations solved problems we're still struggling with today. Get ready to discover why Vikings weren't just fierce warriors. They were survival geniuses whose forgotten knowledge could save your life when modern systems fail. When most people think about Vikings, they picture bearded raiders swinging axes and pillaging monasteries. But that Hollywood image misses something crucial. Vikings were master engineers who survived and thrived in conditions that would kill most modern people within days. These Norse innovators didn't have Home Depot, Amazon Prime, or YouTube tutorials. What they had was something far more valuable: generations of accumulated wisdom about working with nature instead of against it. They understood that true technology isn't about complexity. It's about reliability when everything else fails. The Viking Age lasted from approximately 793 CE to 1066 CE, but their technological innovations were refined over centuries before that. These weren't primitive people stumbling through the Dark Ages. They were sophisticated problem solvers who crossed oceans, established trade networks spanning 3 continents, and built settlements in some of Earth's most unforgiving climates. What's remarkable is how many of these technologies still work perfectly today, requiring no batteries, no fuel deliveries, and no repair technicians. While our modern world grows increasingly dependent on fragile supply chains and electrical grids, Viking methods offer something we've desperately lost: true independence. Let's rediscover what they knew. Sunstones, the crystal GPS that navigated oceans. Long before magnetic compasses reached northern Europe, Vikings were crossing the North Atlantic with pinpoint accuracy using nothing but a special crystal. While we fumble with GPS devices that die when satellites go down or batteries run out, Norse navigators discovered that certain stones could reveal the sun's position even through thick clouds and fog. What made sunstones extraordinary was their ability to polarize light. Vikings used calcite crystals, also called Iceland spar, which had a unique optical property. When held up to the sky and rotated, these crystals would create a double image that changed intensity based on the angle of polarized sunlight. Even when the sun was completely hidden below the horizon or obscured by storm clouds, skilled navigators could determine its exact position within a few degrees. Modern scientific analysis confirms why Vikings treasured these navigation tools so highly. Research published in the Proceedings of the Royal Society has demonstrated that calcite crystals can accurately locate the sun's position with less than 5 degrees of error, even in complete overcast conditions. Scientists from the University of Rennes tested this ancient technique and found it could work effectively during twilight hours when the sun was up to 6 degrees below the horizon. For today's sailors and outdoor enthusiasts, sunstones offer something Jeeps never can: navigation that works without any external infrastructure. You can purchase calcite crystals from mineral suppliers and learn the technique Vikings mastered. It requires practice to interpret the light patterns correctly, but once mastered, you'll have a backup navigation system that never needs charging and can't be jammed or disabled. But while sunstones helped Vikings find their way across oceans, they needed another technology to actually survive those brutal voyages, one that kept them from freezing to death in open boats: the eternal ember, Viking fire preservation systems. While we fumble with waterproof matches and butane lighters that fail in cold weather, Norse travelers developed sophisticated ember preservation systems that could keep fire alive for weeks without any modern fire-starting tools. This wasn't just convenient, it was literally the difference between life and death during ocean crossings and winter expeditions. What made Viking fire preservation special was their understanding of controlled combustion. They discovered that certain materials could sustain a slow, oxygen-starved burn that produced heat without flames. Vikings would select specific types of fungus, particularly a bracket fungus called Fomes fomentarius, also known as tinder fungus or horsehoof fungus, which grew on birch trees throughout Scandinavia. After harvesting, they'd process this fungus through repeated boiling and pounding to create a felt-like material. The chemistry behind this is fascinating. Modern analysis shows that processed tinder fungus contains compounds that allow it to smolder at extremely low temperatures, around 400 to 500 degrees Fahrenheit, 204 to 260 degrees Celsius. Without bursting into flame, Vikings would ignite a piece of this prepared fungus, then store it in hollow animal horns or specially designed wooden containers with small ventilation holes. The limited oxygen created a controlled smolder that could last for days or even weeks. For modern preppers and outdoor enthusiasts, this technique offers something lighter and matches can't match reliability in any weather condition. You can harvest and process tinder fungus yourself using traditional methods or purchase pre-prepared char cloth that works on similar principles. The technique requires no special equipment, just knowledge that's been proven over centuries of use in the harshest conditions imaginable. But keeping fire alive was only part of Viking survival mastery. They also developed construction techniques that created shelter from the landscape itself, living fortifications, turf houses that grow stronger with time. While modern homes require constant maintenance and expensive repairs, Vikings built structures that literally improved with age. Turf houses weren't just shelters. They were living, breathing fortifications that could last for centuries with minimal upkeep and provided insulation that puts modern construction to shame. What made turf construction extraordinary was how it worked with natural processes instead of fighting them. Vikings would build a wooden frame, then stack layers of cut turf, grass and soil still connected, like massive green bricks. These weren't random chunks of dirt either. Norse builders carefully selected turf from specific areas where root systems had created dense, interlocking mats. Each block could weigh 40 to 60 pounds, 18 to 27 kilograms, and measured roughly 3 feet, 0.9 meters, long. The genius lay in what happened after construction. The grass on these turf blocks didn't die. It kept growing. Root systems from adjacent blocks would interweave, creating an increasingly strong structure. Within a few years, the entire building became a single, unified mass of living vegetation and soil. This created insulation values that modern engineers struggle to match. Turf walls 3 feet, 0.9 meters, thick, maintained interior temperatures around 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. Even when outside temperatures plummeted to minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 29 degrees Celsius, or colder. Modern research by the University of Iceland has confirmed that traditional turf houses achieve R values, thermal resistance, of approximately R40 to R50, which exceeds most contemporary insulated walls. The structures also provided natural humidity control, fire resistance, and protection from wind that wooden buildings couldn't match. Archaeological evidence from Icelandic turf houses shows some structures remained habitable for over 200 years. For today's homesteaders and sustainable builders, turf construction offers something modern materials can't: a building that requires almost no external inputs and actually improves over time. Several organizations in Iceland and Scandinavia now teach traditional turf building techniques, and the principles can be adapted to various climates. It's like having a house that maintains itself while providing superior insulation to anything you'd buy at a building supply store. But Vikings didn't just build impressive homes. They also developed food preservation methods that kept provisions fresh for months without refrigeration. Smoke preservation, the chemistry of eternal food storage. Think your vacuum sealer and chest freezer are impressive? Vikings were preserving meat and fish for over a year without electricity, chemicals, or any modern preservation technology. While we depend on refrigeration that fails during power outages, Norse families developed smoking techniques so effective that food could survive ocean voyages lasting months. What made Viking smoke preservation special was their sophisticated understanding of wood chemistry developed through generations of experimentation. They didn't just hang meat over any fire and hope for the best. Vikings carefully selected specific wood types, primarily beech, oak, and alder, because each produced different chemical compounds when burned. These woods released phenols, formaldehyde, and other antimicrobial compounds that penetrated deep into meat tissues. The most sophisticated aspect was their understanding of temperature zones. Vikings built specialized smokehouses with 3 distinct areas: a cold zone around 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 to 32 degrees Celsius, for initial drying, a warm zone at 100 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 to 60 degrees Celsius, for deeper penetration, and occasionally a hot zone reaching 200 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit, 93 to 121 degrees Celsius, for cooking while preserving. They'd move products through these zones over days or weeks, creating layers of preservation that worked from the outside in. Modern food science has confirmed what Vikings knew intuitively. Research published in the Journal of Food Science shows that traditional smoke preservation creates multiple barriers to spoilage. It reduces moisture content below levels that bacteria need, deposits antimicrobial compounds on surfaces, and creates an acidic environment hostile to pathogens. Properly smoked fish can remain safe to eat for over a year at room temperature. For today's hunters and homesteaders, traditional smoking offers something modern preservation can't: food security that doesn't depend on functioning electrical grids or supply chains. You can build a simple smokehouse using basic materials and master techniques that have kept food safe for over a millennium. No special equipment needed, just wood, time, and knowledge that's been proven across centuries. But preserving food was only part of Viking self-sufficiency. They also developed fermentation techniques that created nutritional powerhouses from simple ingredients. Skyr production, fermented dairy that lasts for months. Long before probiotics became a health trend, Vikings were creating fermented dairy products that provided complete nutrition and could last for months without refrigeration, while modern yogurt spoils within weeks. Even when refrigerated, Norse families developed Skyr, a cultured dairy product so nutritionally dense it sustained warriors through brutal campaigns and explorers through Arctic winters. What made Skyr extraordinary was the fermentation process Vikings perfected over centuries. This wasn't just letting milk sit around and hoping for the best. Norse dairy workers would heat milk to specific temperatures, around 185 degrees Fahrenheit, 85 degrees Celsius, which killed competing bacteria while preserving beneficial cultures. After cooling to approximately 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius, they'd add a small amount of previous Skyr batch as a starter culture, similar to sourdough bread techniques. The chemistry behind this is remarkable. Modern analysis shows that Skyr fermentation creates an environment with a pH around 4.5, which is acidic enough to prevent pathogenic bacteria growth while encouraging beneficial lactobacillus cultures. These bacteria consume lactose sugars and produce lactic acid, which acts as a natural preservative. The straining process removes excess whey, concentrating proteins to levels 3 times higher than regular yogurt, approximately 15 to 20 grams of protein per 6-ounce, 170-gram serving. Research by the University of Iceland confirms that traditionally made Skyr contains beneficial bacteria strains that support digestive health, immune function, and even mental well-being through the gut-brain connection. The fermentation process also breaks down lactose, making it digestible for many people who struggle with regular dairy products. For modern families seeking food independence, Skyr production offers something grocery stores can't match: fresh, probiotic-rich nutrition that you control completely. You can make authentic Skyr at home using the same basic technique Vikings used over 1,000 years ago. Start with high-quality milk, a small amount of cultured buttermilk or previous Skyr batch as starter, and patience. The process takes 12 to 24 hours, half a day to a full day, but creates nutrition that lasts for weeks and costs a fraction of commercial alternatives. But Vikings didn't just preserve dairy. They also developed grain storage methods that kept seeds viable for decades. Underground seed vaults, natural climate control for long-term storage. While modern seed companies sell expensive storage containers and climate-controlled vaults, Vikings were preserving seeds for decades, using nothing but holes in the ground and clever understanding of soil physics. These underground storage systems maintained perfect conditions for seed viability without any mechanical refrigeration or dehumidification equipment. What made Viking seed vaults special was their understanding of thermal mass and moisture control. Norse farmers would dig storage pits approximately 6 to 8 feet, 1.8 to 2.4 meters, deep, below the frost line, where temperatures remained stable year-round. At this depth, soil temperatures hover around 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 to 13 degrees Celsius, regardless of surface conditions, creating natural refrigeration that never fails. The genius lay in the construction details. Vikings lined these pits with stones or clay to prevent moisture infiltration, then placed seeds in sealed ceramic vessels or tightly woven baskets coated with beeswax. They'd add layers of dry sand or ash between containers, which absorbed any residual moisture while allowing air circulation. The pit would be covered with a wooden lid, then buried under a mound of soil and turf that provided additional insulation and protection from the elements. Modern agricultural research has confirmed the effectiveness of this ancient technique. Studies by the Nordic Genetic Resource Center show that seeds stored using traditional underground methods can maintain 80 to 90% viability for 10 to 20 years, with some hardy varieties remaining viable for over 30 years. The stable temperature and low moisture environment prevents the oxidation and enzymatic breakdown that destroys seeds in fluctuating conditions. For today's gardeners and homesteaders, underground seed vaults offer something modern. Storage can't. Truly independent food security that doesn't rely on electricity or manufactured containers. You can create your own seed vault using traditional Viking principles, adapted to your climate. Dig below your local frost line, ensure proper drainage, and use natural materials for moisture control. It's like having a personal seed bank that operates on physics alone. But preserving seeds was just one aspect of Viking agricultural wisdom. They also developed soil building techniques that created fertility without any external inputs. Composting latrines, turning waste into black gold. Think modern composting toilets are innovative? Vikings were converting human waste into valuable fertilizer over 1,000 years ago, creating closed-loop sanitation systems that solved two problems simultaneously. While we flush away nutrients and create pollution, Norse farmers developed techniques that transformed waste into the rich soil amendments that sustained their agriculture. What made Viking composting systems special was their understanding of aerobic decomposition and pathogen elimination. These weren't just holes in the ground, they were carefully engineered structures that managed the biological processes necessary for safe, effective composting. Vikings built latrines with deep pits lined with stones, then layered human waste with carbon-rich materials like straw, wood ash, and peat moss. The chemistry behind this is sophisticated. Modern soil science confirms that the composting process Vikings used generates internal temperatures of 130 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit, 54 to 71 degrees Celsius, when properly managed, which is hot enough to kill parasites, pathogens, and weed seeds. The addition of wood ash raised pH levels and provided potassium, while peat moss absorbed excess moisture and controlled odors. After 12 to 18 months of decomposition, the resulting material was safe, nutrient-rich compost. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements shows sophisticated waste management systems. Excavations at Jorvik, modern York, England, revealed multi-chambered latrine structures that allowed one pit to decompose while another was in active use, essentially a two-bin composting system that ensured continuous operation. Analysis of soil samples from Viking-era farms shows significantly higher nitrogen and phosphorus levels than surrounding areas, indicating systematic fertilizer application. For modern homesteaders seeking true self-sufficiency, composting latrines offer something municipal sewage systems can't: complete nutrient recycling that builds soil fertility. Instead of creating pollution, you can implement Viking-inspired composting systems using modern materials while following the same biological principles. The technique requires no water, no electricity, and no connection to external infrastructure, just understanding of natural processes that Vikings mastered centuries ago. But soil fertility was only valuable if you could protect crops from harsh weather, which brings us to another Viking innovation: wattle fencing, living windbreaks that multiply themselves. While modern farmers spend thousands on metal fencing that rusts and requires constant maintenance, Vikings created barriers from living willow branches that actually grew stronger over time and reproduced themselves. These weren't just property markers. They were functional windbreaks, livestock barriers, and even food sources that required almost zero maintenance once established. What made wattle fencing extraordinary was how it worked with plant biology instead of fighting it. Vikings would harvest young willow shoots in late winter when sap was down, then weave them between upright stakes driven into the ground. Here's where it gets clever. They'd use living willow stakes that still had viable buds. Within weeks of installation, both the stakes and the woven branches would begin sprouting roots and leaves. The genius lay in what happened over the following years. The fence literally came alive, with roots spreading deep into soil and branches thickening into a dense, impenetrable barrier. Willow grows incredibly fast. Some species can add 6 to 10 feet, 1.8 to 3 meters, of growth per year. Vikings could harvest new shoots from established fences annually, creating an endless supply of building material, basket weaving material, and even livestock fodder. Modern agricultural research by Scandinavian universities has confirmed the effectiveness of living willow barriers. Studies show that properly maintained wattle fences reduce wind speed by 60 to 80% for distances up to 10 times the fence height, protecting crops and livestock from harsh weather. The root systems also prevent soil erosion, filter water runoff, and provide habitat for beneficial insects and birds. For today's farmers and homesteaders, living fences offer something manufactured barriers never can: infrastructure that improves itself while providing multiple benefits. You can establish wattle fencing using techniques Vikings perfected over a millennium ago. Harvest dormant willow shoots in late winter, weave them between living stakes, and watch your fence literally grow itself. It's like having a barrier that repairs itself, multiplies itself, and even feeds your livestock, all without a single trip to the hardware store. But protecting crops was only part of Viking agricultural mastery. They also developed water management systems that worked entirely on gravity. Gravity-fed irrigation, moving water without pumps. Long before electric pumps and PVC pipes, Vikings were moving water across their settlements using nothing but gravity, clever engineering, and an understanding of fluid dynamics that would impress modern hydraulic engineers. While we depend on pumps that fail during power outages, Norse farmers created irrigation systems that operated continuously for decades without any mechanical assistance. What made Viking irrigation special was their mastery of gradient calculations and water pressure principles. They'd identify water sources at higher elevations, springs, streams, or even snowmelt collection areas, then dig channels that descended at carefully calculated angles. The slope had to be steep enough to maintain flow, but gentle enough to prevent erosion. Vikings achieved gradients of approximately 1 to 3%, dropping 1 to 3 feet per 100 feet of distance, or 1 to 3 meters per 100 meters, which created steady, manageable water flow. The engineering sophistication shows in the details. Norse builders lined channels with stones to prevent erosion, created settling basins where sediment could drop out before reaching fields, and built distribution systems that could direct water to multiple areas. They understood that water pressure increases with depth, so they could even move water uphill short distances using siphon principles, filling a sealed channel that dipped below the water source level, then rose to deliver water to a slightly lower endpoint. Archaeological evidence from Norse settlements in Iceland and Greenland shows extensive irrigation networks. Excavations have revealed stone-lined channels over 1,000 feet, 305 meters, long that still function today when cleared of accumulated sediment. Modern analysis shows these systems could deliver 50 to 100 gallons, 189 to 379 liters, per hour continuously, enough to irrigate several acres of crops without any energy input beyond initial construction labor. For modern homesteaders and farmers, gravity-fed irrigation offers something electric pumps can't match: water delivery that works forever without fuel, electricity, or maintenance, beyond occasional cleaning. You can design and build gravity-fed systems using Viking principles adapted to your landscape. The initial investment is pure labor, but the result is infrastructure that operates indefinitely on physics alone. But moving water to crops was only valuable if you could store food for lean times, which brings us to our final Viking technology: bog butter, nature's underground refrigerator. Think your refrigerator is impressive? Vikings discovered that certain types of wetlands could preserve dairy products for literally centuries without any mechanical cooling or chemical preservatives. While modern refrigeration fails during power outages, Norse families used bog preservation techniques so effective that archaeologists are still finding edible butter that's over 1,000 years old. What made bog preservation extraordinary was the unique chemistry of peat bogs. Vikings discovered that these waterlogged environments created perfect preservation conditions through a combination of factors. Peat bogs have a pH level around 3.5 to 4.5, similar to vinegar, which stops harmful bacteria dead in their tracks. The water is also extremely low in oxygen, preventing aerobic decomposition. Add consistently cool temperatures around 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 to 10 degrees Celsius, year-round, and you've got nature's perfect refrigerator. The technique was beautifully simple. Norse families would pack butter, cheese, or other dairy products into wooden barrels or wrapped packages, then submerge them in peat bogs. The acidic, oxygen-poor environment prevented spoilage, while the cool temperatures kept everything stable. Vikings could store dairy products this way for months or even years, retrieving them as needed. The butter would develop a slightly cheesy flavor from the fermentation, but remained perfectly safe and nutritious. Modern food science has confirmed the effectiveness of this ancient technique. Researchers have analyzed bog butter samples dating back over 1,000 years and found them still technically edible, though the flavor has intensified considerably. The chemistry behind this preservation is so effective that some modern cheesemakers have begun experimenting with bog aging to create unique flavored products. For today's homesteaders seeking food preservation methods that don't depend on electricity, bog preservation offers something modern. Refrigeration can't. Storage that works indefinitely without any energy input. If you have access to peat bog areas or can create similar conditions artificially, you can use techniques Vikings perfected over a millennium ago. The method requires no special equipment, just understanding of natural chemistry that's been proven across centuries. These 10 Viking technologies represent more than just historical curiosities. They're proof that our ancestors understood resilience in ways we've completely forgotten. While modern society grows increasingly dependent on fragile electrical grids and complex supply chains, Viking methods offer something we desperately need: true independence that works when everything else fails. What's remarkable is how accessible these techniques remain today. No rare materials, no complex manufacturing, no global supply chains required. Just knowledge, basic materials, and willingness to learn from people who survived conditions that would kill most modern humans within days. Start with one technique that matches your environment and needs. Master the Sunstone navigation system, or try building a simple smokehouse. Before long, you'll have skills that money can't buy and technology that never becomes obsolete. And if you had a good time raiding the past with us today, do us a favor and pillage that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the fascinating and often surprising world of Midgard living.